Peace, peace.
Blessed love, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom. How are we? How's everyone doing? You know, you know the drill. If y'all can hear me, put a number one in the chat.
Yeah. Give me some knowledge.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
It's good to have you in the space. Shabbat shalom, Sister Manira. Can you hear us? Gotta wait for that 20-second delay, right?
Yes. 20-second delay.
Okay, just gonna wait.
Wap, huh? We got a number one.
All right,
Yes.
cool. Shabbat shalom, Mama Akuya.
Yes, blessed love, family. Yes, Shabbat Shalom.
Yeah, so we're here, the end of another Shavua. And of course, we give thanks. Peace, Chief.
Yes, Baba Chief, you yeah.
Shabbat Shalom.
Check now. Yes.
So, of course, we are coming on the end of another Shavua, going into our Shabbat. And of course, we had a wonderful show. We had Chief did a live of the last Shabbat. And then, of course, we had Chief doing another live last night about, it was a breakdown of the movie The Visitors, which is, I thought was a very interesting film. Definitely got to rewatch it. I would definitely recommend that breakdown as well. Chief gets into it. Tonight, of course, we are going to be continuing that section on generational curses under family. So, you want to do the introduction?
Yeah, man. So everybody is here. Yes. Greetings, Sister Deidre. Firstly, I am Baba Cruz. This is my cousin and Anu Brother Antonio. We are coming to you live from the Anu City of the Bahamas. Yes. So first we want to acknowledge that we give thanks for this space. As you put your comments in the chat, we do have a 20-second delay. But that being said, we will respect your Sabbath and we will start to proceed to move into the reading. So we want to give thanks to the Most High Yah for bringing us through this strong to come into this space so that we can actually have the sharing with you and actually venerate and establish our Sabbath as a community. We also want to give thanks to Baba Chief Yuya for actually being humbled and a slave to his purpose, for actually bringing us enlightenment and transformation the way that he has been doing and continuously does, that we are actually able to articulate and calculation, which is the calculation of the people from heaven. So at this point now, what we'll do is we will recite the prefix because it needs to be something that we continually imprint as we actually start to foundate ourselves in our journey. This is a condensed version. This book is not to be read only once. Read the words of this book of knowledge and wisdom out loud. Discuss the convictions of this work with your Anu brothers and sisters. Share this information with your people. This publication should be read daily. Every line in this book can be taken out of context and studied on the strength of its own potential. The truth is to be deliberated. And that is in the strong words of Baba Chief Yuya San Anu. That being said, we are going to get the journey started for us to actually start moving into our Sabbath with our Anu reading this evening.
Of course. So, we're just going to give you a brief overview of the paragraph that we're going to get into, and then we're going to go ahead and dissect it, line for line. So, there are some who can operate large equipment like airplanes, large sea vessels, and construction equipment with very little thought. They maneuver these large vehicles that once intimidated them with a reflexive second nature, because they took many seasons to prepare for their operation. This is the proper approach to matrimony. We pursue a sacred union between man and woman in the following order. We court, we betroth, and we marry. We will note here that women under the age of 65 who are single should make sure that they are properly prepared for matrimony and should diligently seek it. All right, so this is coming off of the sister's breakdown of the previous paragraph, which was a very, very interactive look into preparation and training for matrimony.
Yes, yes. And at this point, we want to actually put a question to everybody. And the question is, at what point in your life did you think you were responsible enough to live without guidance? And how did you qualify your decision? Again, at what point in your life did you think that you were able to operate without guidance? You're an adult, you're grown, you can make your own decisions. You don't need anybody to tell you anything. And how did you qualify that decision? How did you qualify that mind space? All right, so again, we do acknowledge that there's a 20-second delay, so our apologies if it takes us a while to actually get to it. But what I really want to do is start to get into this first paragraph. It says, there are some who can operate large equipment like airplanes, large sea vessels, and construction equipment without very little thought. And, you know, what I start to think about is the cipher of the paragraph ahead that the sisters broke down last week, which it says, training for matrimony is imperative. When we study a craft, we initially study the mechanics of that craft. So, we see, individuals hop in these large aircrafts that carry tons, um, operate vessels that carry hundreds of containers across, the various oceans from one side of the earth to the next. And, especially if you're around city limits that are maybe going through major construction, skyscrapers and so on, you see these large cranes, everything's moving, and, it seems very seamless. And we many times don't think about the level of discipline that actually had to go into that process. There's a very common philosophy moving now when they speak about mastery, when a lot of people start to coin that they put their 10,000 hours in, and it is said that you have to put 10,000 hours into something to actually become a master at it. And in most cases, they say if you were to measure that between a certain allotment of time, daily and weekly, it takes you to the area of about 7 years. So if something takes you 7 years to master, so you're looking at yourself being a master student for a period of time. But I want to break into, when I think about aircrafts, pilots, very large airplanes, everyone's foundation is leveled on one culture. They all start at the private pilot. So, you drive past an aircraft or airport, I should say, and you see all these large aircrafts, but you got all these little small mosquitoes lined up outside the terminal, but no matter who you are, you start there. And it's interesting because the culture of transport, which we would say planes, trains, and automobiles, whether it be air, ocean, land, is pretty much governed by the same philosophy, which is there's a level of theory that's given to you where they take a lot of basic knowledge that you would have been exposed to in most cases already, like geography, math, those kind of things, and they actually drive into you a lot of theory for maybe perhaps 2 to 3 months. And then from there, there's an instructor-led period that no matter what or who you are, you have to be monitored. And that there speaks a lot of volumes, because when you think about the easement of operation, we never think about the humility of the operator for that period of time. Like for instance, the private pilot's license and certification on average is about 65 hours of flying time or training. Out of that 65 hours, there's only about 15 hours of that's actually solo. So the whole time you're being monitored to actually validate you to get to the next area, to the next level. Now, interesting enough, even then you're still grounded. You're not allowed to fly certain types of equipment. You actually cannot even fly in the nighttime if it's too cloudy. So it's just really getting you to understand the process. But the process that they're actually getting you to understand is actually limits the things that regulate you in this process. And that again speaks strong volumes when we start to think about the culture. And it's amazing that there's so much emphasis that Chief brought home for us with reference to training for matrimony. If you notice, it's under the section of generational curses. And for me, that speaks major volumes because it indicates that the lack of training is a generational curse. The lack of success in the process is a generational curse. Most of us don't have the easement of operations in our family situations in life, really, because we didn't actually submit to the humility of actually carrying an instructor led load. There was a segment that Chief did in 2015, which you've actually pulled from a lot in some of our conversations, which was self initiation or, um, or spirit guide. And Chief started to break down for us where your spirit guide, your elders, which he serves as, um, lets you know that you are not as far as you actually think you are. And the culture that you're tethered to, if it's on the proper foundation, in this case now, the Anue foundations, this culture lets you know that there are checks and balances and protocols that one must go through. So it's just like when you're actually learning that private pilot certification. You're not able to produce anything until you become a commercial pilot. So you need hundreds of flying hours to actually even be able to earn an income. And this culture of being chaperoned is something that's very important. You must take the student role, and your elders must actually lift you up, which is something that we were actually dialoguing strongly about maybe 2 to 3 nights ago
Right.
on our journey.
Right. And one of the things that you had also touched on when you were speaking just now that I thought was key was grounding. You have to stay grounded. You're not allowed to fly until you've proven a certain, that you've achieved a certain level of flight hours, for one. But it's like a rites of passage as well. You know what I mean? And that old thing that you always hear on the intercom, we are now clear for takeoff. Yeah, if you ain't clear for takeoff and you start heading up that runway, you don't know if there's someone else coming to land. You don't know if there's someone circling the airspace that you haven't been coordinating with. So it's also interesting that you brought up the fact that this is under generational curses. You know what I mean? And generational curses is under family. It's not under um, a section called spirituality. It's under the section of family. So that right there shows you that if you're not careful, you sow the seeds of that curse that is gonna be that's gonna be manifesting later on in your bloodline or even in your lifetime. You know what I mean? So just that whole thing about being grounded until you're prepared or cleared for takeoff is very key. And it speaks to the question that we just asked earlier about, when did you think that you were qualified to think for yourself or direct your own life? You know what I mean? And of course, I want to take a quick second to say peace to everyone in the chat. Peace is to Shamanique and Ima Sequoia, Ima Precious, Sovereign Eats, peace, Sister Mark Chip, Brother Chris.
Yes. Shalom.
Yeah, man. I'm out for sure.
Maxine. Cool vibes, man. Cool vibes.
So there are some who can operate large equipment, right? And that's what you were just speaking to, without very little thought. And they maneuver these large vehicles that once intimidated them with a reflexive second nature because they took many seasons to prepare for their operation. And of course, again, you got to stay grounded until you got your flight hours. You know what I mean? But once you got them, then, you're clear to be 10,000, 30,000, even higher. All of those feet in the air, all those miles in the air, and you don't really feel it. It's not like the first time you sit in the cockpit and your instructor's like, all right, take off. Like, what? Yeah, we got to go up in the air. And you got to make sure that you can sustain our altitude. You know, the nose doesn't tilt too much to the ground. We don't stall out. And then after you get the hang of that, it's like, all right, cool. Now land it. Like, you got to go through all of that, and it sucks the first couple of the times because you know it's not really like you're having that much fun. You're just concerned with not screwing up because it's not like someone says catch
Mhm.
and it might hit you in your face because you close your hands too far, too slow. You know, if you fail, that's it. You know, and that's why we have all of these rites and passage in place because if you fail, it's not just your loss. You have passengers, you have other pilots in the airspace who also are passengers. You have the people on the ground. You have all of these different factors that you can um, unconsciously or even unintentionally mess up. So even if you have a family and you make a mistake, then you can mess up the rest of the community. And Chief had just stated in the chat to answer your question, I've never come to the point of functioning independently. Many of my guides are now invisible, but even the echoes of their wisdom are my checkpoints before launch. Give thanks for that, Chief.
Powerful,
Mm-hmm.
powerful. I know it's very very aligned. Just even the choosing of words just now, because like for instance, when you were starting to speak about practice, you were starting to allude to practice and the preparation for operation. Um, Again, that's I can speak a lot to the aviation area. So uh, when you think about building experience, there's a time when you actually have to fly blindly. This is what they call the instrument rating, and you have to rely on your efficiency of training, but you never do it without an instructor present. There's always a counsel. And matter of fact, even when you become a very experienced pilot, 25 years, there's always a checklist. And there's, in essence, a counsel for that culture, which is your air traffic. They can actually walk you through the entire process of your journey and every single application of what you're doing. And every time you move into a new installment of responsibility, in this case, a larger bit of equipment, aircraft, there's a level of type rating that you have to go through that qualifies you every single step. And in Anu, that is something that we continually strive with. As more responsibilities are given, there are individuals who are directly above you. And it's made perfectly clear exactly what the rules are expected to be you as the person who's assisting and the person who's now responsible for chaperoning you. So when you look at the practice elements, there is a season that you're expected to go through the learning process before you're even given the responsibility to operate on your own. And Chief had made a segment a couple of years ago which spoke to the right to speak. Who can qualify you in this case now? And now we get to the element where we pursue a sacred union between man and woman in the following order: we court, we betroth, we marry. In this case, now we look at seasons. If we go into the solutions for dysfunctional family work by Chief, there's a time allotment, which is it's recommended that those who are in the courting process go through 3 seasons together. And then after that, the betrothal process, and then the marrying. The sisters are going to get into that a lot more next week, or next strong rather. But there's never a time when there isn't somebody who can qualify what you're saying or debunk what you're saying. There has to be a level of practice as you as the student, and you the person who's taking the guidance. Like Chief mentioned, those echoes and the checkpoints for launch, as he said.
Right, right. And of course, that paragraph that paragraph right there is punctuated with the sentence, "This is the proper approach to matrimony." So I'll read it again. You maneuver these large vehicles because you have a reflexive second nature about you. You've already taken so many man hours and so many sessions and under so much supervision and guidance and chaperoning that once you've gone through that preparation, you you don't really need to think about how to operate it. You have a tool that you can operate, yeah, but now it's a means to an end. And that's something that we have to really pay attention to as well. These systems are tools. What are you using these tools to produce? You have a desired result. I have these people who want to get to this other landmass, and they're willing to pay me, and I can do it, but I have to make sure that I can transport them safely and responsibly. So now, Chief has always broken down responsibility as being able to respond, or respond with ability. So now, if your ability isn't there because you don't have proper training, or your training hasn't been done under the watchful eye of someone who's further along the path than you, then you're gonna put a lot of lives in jeopardy, including your own.
Powerful, and just when you think about earlier in the generational curses section of reading, a couple of paragraphs ago, it says discipline and respect are more important at the onset of a new relationship. When you think about respect, what is to see? What is it that this person is bringing? Who are you? Also, who's the observer? And this is where self-assessment comes in. One thing that you will find very, very common by a majority, I'll probably say, is most people who can operate large bits of equipment, whether it be large ocean liners, construction equipment, and so on, they're very humble to say what level they are. They will never, ever undertake something that they haven't been trained to do, something that they have not been qualified for, because they understand the level of responsibility it is that they have. And that reflexive nature comes as a result of all of the assurance and the guidance that they've gotten at this point. Not just experience, but also the guidance. So even the guy who's operating the large crane, his safety check officer down on the ground, he has a level of responsibility that has been checked off by his instructors. So in this case, now let's look at this from a community standpoint when we think about Anu. We look at our journey and how we're qualified, how we undertake certain responsibilities, and also our performance in these levels. So when we approach an ask, perhaps, or petition, in most cases, if we're denied, it's because we would have possibly had demonstrated something that maybe does not qualify, not maybe, but it won't qualify us. The other thing is, Chief always tells us that we're being pushed to strive greater. We need to demonstrate more. And this here builds the efficiency. Your assurance and reflexive nature comes as a result of you continually fixing your posture. And this comes from fight sciences. If you practice throwing very weak blows or weak blocks, when you're in a tournament, you will actually do the same thing. So you must practice to actually level yourself off with proper posturing all the time.
Shout out to Seafood.
Yes.
Yes. Peace, Shia. Just want to reiterate that question again. So the question for the chat, in case you were just coming in, is at what point in your life did you think you were responsible enough to live without guidance? And how did you qualify that? How did you qualify the thought that I don't need anyone, guiding me anymore? Or some people would sort of try and put a negative spin on it, like I don't need you to hold my hand. You know what I mean? But the final paragraph says, we will note here, women under the age of 65 who are single should make sure that they are properly prepared for matrimony and should diligently seek it. So again, this training is a means to an end. You're looking to do something, and this training is to make sure that you can do it properly and responsibly, but you still got to do it. You know what I mean? So that's where that diligence comes in.
Naturally. It also speaks a lot to culture. Again, looking at the standard of a culture, if you consider a lot of women, and in this case, you could even possibly say that females who would be over 60 years old, they think because they're possibly not in a mated relationship that they're done, but that speaks to a very sick culture of thought. and understanding that our survival. I think I probably said this every time we've been presenting for Sabbath. It's always been in my mind since Chief said it that we need to start looking at our being together as essential for our survival. So continually preparing yourself and seeking to achieve a higher level of qualification and balance, most importantly, is something that we should never move away from. Master students, we should always be, and to see our Jegna state that he is a student, knowing what he's passed on to us, it humbles me even more in this process.
Likewise, likewise. So we have another response in the chat, and this is from Mama Precious. Functioning independently prior to coming under the wisdom of Anu, I did believe that my existence was one of an independent woman. How foolish! As a woman, I require guidance. Yeah, it's funny. I've been, working on my studies in terms of a certification that I'm wrapping up, and it deals with speaking to international people because it's a language based certification. And as practice, I usually try to engage in language exchange. And one of the sisters that I was paired with, like, she could barely speak English, but she was adamant about being independent. She asked me about having a significant other. Of course, I reciprocated the question, but her response was, "I've been single for 10 years, and I don't want a mate, and I'm independent." I'm like, okay. I didn't know how to say in a language that might not be the best way to look at it, but it shows that this is an international phenomenon. It's not just um, in usually when someone says the West, they think of either U.S., Canada, or Britain, but it's a European mindset that at least it's pervasive in a lot of European countries and those that are adjacent to them. That the woman can be independent, and there's Chief has always spoken to the push towards unisexualization. You know, Men can do what women do, and vice versa. And when you have, my brother just mentioned this earlier today, but when you try to merge the two, you wind up with chaos. You know what I mean?
Powerful. And, so when you think about that chaos element comes from like the split camp, not like, sorry, the split camp operation, which is mentioned in the solutions for dysfunctional family relationships. And again, we go back to the beginning of generational curses and tying it into the reflexive nature. The level of reflexes can never be developed if the proficiency of the formula is not established. This is what your end result is, and this is how the elders have been doing it. The elders are guiding the process for us. So again, I'll remind you that what family is. Family can be defined as the fundamental group of any society which consists of two or more individuals with the same goals and objectives. This is the third paragraph of generational curses. So in many cases, the same goals and objectives have not been established. And if someone has to be brought up to the next level, in this case, the king should be bringing his queen up to that level so that she can be better equipped as his helpmate. If he's not equipped by his elders and has not humbled himself to actually go through that process, there will never be a reflexive nature actually established. And regretfully, in most cases, by the majority, that's actually what we have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Horrible.
yeah. We have Sister Deidre and Maxine. So I thought I was responsible enough at the start of a past relationship, which was a complete illusion. I was trying to prove that I had everything under control. The decision was made without wisdom. Sister Deidre says, I mistakenly thought that I was ready to be on my own with no covering when I was 25, pretty young. I used what everybody else was doing as my measuring stick. What a fool I was. Yeah, the majority, right?
Yeah, but Yeah, I mean, you say that it's young, but I gotta hit that paragraph I just read again. You gotta note that women under the age of 65 who are single should make sure that they are properly prepared for matrimony and should diligently seek it. Not a dig at you, Sister Deidre, but just the culture that we were raised in and what we are taught. Like, and I've seen this with certain performances. Like, you can always pick out, like, if you see a live performance, like, especially if you go to like a school recital or anything like that, you can always pick out the ones who actually study the formula and study the movements, and the ones that are kind of just showing up and watching what everybody else is doing. Like, there's no confidence behind it because you're not exactly sure if it's been tried and proven before. You know, you haven't performed it before. You haven't done it before. Like, they're usually more confident on the second night out. But opening night, that's when everybody's, palms are sweaty.
True. True.
I'm not gonna finish that line.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Sumbo spaghetti.
Yeah. But one of the unique things is if you think about the steps that have been skipped and the seasons that have not been utilized to actually qualify yourself, especially as Anu men, we are encouraged to actually continually build and qualify ourselves so that we can lead. And the sisters are also encouraged to qualify themselves so that they can follow and they can assist. And that there becomes a difficult thing because most people are of the mindset that, you know what, I can do a weekend certification. Now I can actually hop on YouTube and I can start giving people family relationship guidance. And as a result of that, there is no qualification for the culture. So when somebody who possibly has some very real issues and needs very real guidance comes to them, they have no eldership above them that can actually be sought and pulled from to say, okay, this is the link, this is the chain. I have an 80-year-old elder in my community. I have a 65-year-old elder. The elder who I answer to directly is possibly just over 50. And me in my 30s now, I'm actually pulling this chain, and this person that was coming up behind me was possibly in the mid-20s. Like, for instance, I'll just use the mid-20s example from Sister Deidre. They're now able to actually be reinforced by our entire community. They're able to see these different mindsets. So this like these different levels of weight classes and equipment.
Chief says it's tricky when one boasts of independence. The follow-up question could be independent from whom? Independent groups are esteem worthy. Independent people miss the point of a human experience. I read that again. It's tricky. When one boasts independence, the follow-up question could be independent from whom? Independent groups are esteem worthy. Independent people miss the point of human experience. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's amazing when you speak about tricky because if you think about independence, most people who push for independence normally want to do it so that a group can live, so that a group can survive. So you'll find someone say, hey, we need to be independent. There's a we. What is the independent structure now? That there is something I definitely need more seasons in establishing within myself because I'm nowhere close to eldership. And as I plan for that next level, I will also need to learn as a Jagna in training what it is to actually foundation myself, and to make sure that I am actually belonging to that better class, the special ones. I knew.
Yeah, and that question was key. Independent from who? You know what I mean? So when you think about it, a lot of these Chief actually touched on this the past Shabbat. When you talk about Lestat or the state, you're trying to be independent, but you're told that you're not supposed to be subordinate to a man when it boils down to it. and you try to avoid coming under any form of authority that looks masculine, but you forget the state that you're so dependent on. You know what I mean? I have a friend of mine who has spoken to, a woman that he had dealt with, or a female that he had dealt with. They had gotten married, gotten divorced, and now it's possible that she's going to be putting him on child support. You know what I mean? Even though he takes care of his child, and he checks for the child more than he checks for her. But she could go to the state and say, listen, I want to receive a check from this person every however many months or weeks. And the state would be like, okay, I know you're going to spend it back with us anyway, so sure. So who's really benefiting from this independence?
Naturally. And, even when you think about the, I guess what you can say would normally lead to people being in that position, Chief said this is the proper approach to matchmaking. That proper approach is to be able to have the reflexive second nature, and that reflexive second nature becomes present because you were continually tested. You were continually placed in positions where intimidation had to be present, and you overcame fear. You had to be placed in a cockpit, and you had to fly in the dark with only the theories of what your instructor enforced and assured you that you were prepared to actually do on your own. Now, just looking at instruments, qualifying yourself with the culture that it is that you're a part of, you got it. You're good. It's like when you're you see for your instructor puts you in a position. Okay, let's go. You got it. Remember posture. Everything else that was once a fair factor in your space is now moved away. Now you're prepared for matrimony because you've been qualified by brothers and elders. You've actually even humbled yourself to the fact that, hey, people are actually observing me. What is it that I do? Demonstration over proclamation. This is how I operate. I can actually lift heavy loads up multiple stories. I can actually do this. Or perhaps maybe I'm down here. I need to be qualified a little more first. I need to be taken under more tutelage first, So, off of that, we want to encourage everybody to actually give themselves strong assessment and, ask the hard questions. Am I prepared to be observed 24/7 before I actually walk into this other phase of my life? Can I, or have I developed rather, that reflexive nature to be able to articulate the laws of the said culture, and despite how it may feel in moments, actually make sure that they're enforced. If I want to actually fly that aircraft, does regulation prohibit me? Even though I think I might be ready, does regulation prohibit me from actually moving in what I want? This is the discipline factor now that was spoken of in the earlier paragraphs of generational curses. Yeah, man.
And it's not necessarily a want. I think that was something that just stuck out to me. It's not that you want. I could be in the cockpit with 27 people in the plane, and I'd be like, I want to see if I could do a barrel roll right now. You know what I mean? So it's about understanding what the mission is and keeping your eyes focused on that. And that is something that comes with time and with practice. When you sit in that cockpit for the first time, you might look at all those dials and be like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing here. But after a while, a few sessions, and you might come back into the cockpit like, this looks off. Like something's wrong. We have enough fuel. You know what I mean? You start asking the right questions because you've been practicing under the guidance of someone who is going to ask you the questions that they know you can't answer.
Naturally.
Just to make sure you realize that you've got to check your surroundings. You know what I mean? And Chief had said something last night where he was talking about, application. Applications are going to be opening up for our new on the 20th of March through the 31st of March. But he had said, if you're not sure or if you're not going to be committed, then yeah, don't sign up. You know what I mean? So I would definitely, take that under some consideration. But this is, of course, going to be the last cohort that we do through application. Everything after that will be more so through recruitment. All right. So if you think that this is something that you want to do, if you have been following for a while, if your life has been improving from what you've been learning here, then by all means sign up.
Naturally, and something to really kind of bring even the principle home is the whole journey of what you're embarking on. If you're sincere to be committed to Anu, is preparing you for the space to be strong in foundation as a family, so that as a collection of families we can come together in the kingdom of Anu. The whole purpose of you submitting yourself to instructor-led processes is actually to prepare you so that one day you can instruct. If obviously you can still sincerely be on the journey. But the truth of the matter is, your captain is there to assist you to be the best first officer that you can be. And eventually, you can now take the role as captain so that they now have more responsibilities. That chain. At some point, you have to move from where you are. And if you don't, then you're going against the laws. You're definitely going against the laws. The states, you should read this daily. If you continually practice applying yourself and being as optimized as you can be, reading Anu Foundations daily, discoursing with Anu Brethren daily, looking at Anu Calculation daily, you become more in tune with your heavenliness, your heavenly side. And just want to encourage everybody, if you're the special one.
Yeah, man. So, anything you want to say in closing before we wrap it up?
Yeah, man. You sisters, if you're listening, 65 and under, listen, man. Look for it, Look for it. There's a space in the kingdom. There's a space in the kingdom, and I'm not speaking about it from a mating perspective. You look at the family. You want to get yourself away from the generational curses. Mm-hmm. And I'll recommend for everybody to look at Chief segment on blood redemption also, because this complements this particular passage so well. Mm-hmm. Complements it so well. Renouncement. Look at where you are. Give yourself assessment. Where have I failed? Where have I actually been sinful against the nature of which I was called there to do, or to be, sorry? And how has my family actually even contributed to that for generations and generations of? Mm-hmm. And start bringing it into alignment, so that you can actually enter the school and get the divine calculations that are instructor-led.
Right. There's also actually a segment called self-assessment and meditation, which is funny because I'd actually listened to that one earlier today. But one of the things that Chief touched on, it's good to look at what your family has done to contribute to it. But one of the main questions Chief had charged us to ask is, how have I contributed to my own situation? Mm-hmm. Beyond, the only thing I see is I allowed them to do this to me, Not taking a victim mindset, but answering that question and being prepared for those answers to be more likely than not, they're going to be uncomfortable. But you got to take your medicine, like you said. So that's a segment that I would really recommend. And of course, pick up a copy of The Anu Way. The link to it will be in the description below. It's a free tome. You can send in donations if you'd like to, but you can get it for free. And all of the information as to mating and courtship, as well as other calculations that we've been discussing thus far, they're in that book. I'd also recommend every strong we bring this book up, Solutions to Dysfunctional Family Relationships, right? Because we're talking about family. So that would be, all I have to say about that. Good night.
Yeah, man. Full joy. We just want to encourage everyone to continually assess yourself And if you're in the space, means that there's something moving in you that's looking to actually be aligned and move and actually shuffle so that you can get your proper and true foundation. Chief said it on a couple of his intros back in a couple of years back in some of his earlier segments. He's just trying to help us get our power back. So power comes in this family, man. So off of that family, just want to encourage everybody, let's take it to the next level. Let's ground ourselves. And let's go into the instrument rating. Let's start getting divine calculations, moving away from the fear factor, improving ourselves instinctively through the different seasons. Let's start qualifying ourselves so that we can actually come into the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah, man. So after that, Shabbat Shalom. Give thanks to everyone in the space.
Yes.
You all enjoy your Sabbath.
Blessings.
Peace.